Hey. Hey, girl. You like podcasts? You like podcasts about adult matters? Yeah, I know you do. I know you're all in the mood after you have been watching election coverage all week. All you can think of is, I need to tap into my divine sexual polarity. Well, Open Loops is here to do that. And gentlemen, that must have been a weird intro for you. It's all coming up on Open Loops. I consider it an affront to my family that you haven't heard about Anchor. It's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain, okay? Let me just lay this out for you. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And get this, okay? Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money, moolah, from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Open loops. Open loops. Open loops. Open loops. Open loops. You must listen to the open loops, a theme park for absurd beliefs and systems of integration between the mind and the creative spirit. Open loops.
Welcome to Open Loops, conversations that bend. Hey, you're looking for a late night talk show for the shamelessly fringe? You sitting there going, I really want to blow my mind. Well, what if that feeling had a place you could go? A theme park for the intellect, the imagination. It's a podcast. It's here. It's Open Loops. And I am your host, Chief Looper, Greg Bornstein. Maya Kova, she is a very, very interesting person, talking about reawakening the divine feminine. She also works with men to help them bring forth their masculine nature. You know, she's going to say things this episode that you'll listen on. It's gonna ruffle some feathers, I think, which I love. She's not afraid to speak, at least the truth she encounters. Seems like Maya, who is, I guess I would call her a sexual alchemist, a tantric coach. She seems tapped in to something. Definitely definitely that pleasurable energy. Pleasure's a theme that we talk about. I definitely found it a pleasure to chat with her. There was something appealing about her. I don't know if she was just like working. I mean, look, full disclosure, I'm a simple man. If someone's going to be, working their feminine wiles on me, I'm probably going to fall into it. But I don't think it was just that. I mean, there's a difference between, do I have enough money to buy this ice cream cone? Which I have some friends who have told me they will pull out feminine wiles to get free ice cream in New York City ice cream trucks versus someone like Maya, who she's teaching women to tap into their feminine essence. I feel like she really lives this life. I feel like she really, I don't think she just like puts on the flirt. Like I think she's living life from a very she's living life from a place that is free, like freedom for herself. It's always complicated. I'm a straight white male and I'm talking about like sexual polarity. Like, you know, I mean, Joe Biden's now president, but that doesn't mean that I could get deplatformed any second. That said, I like entertaining these conversations and I like learning more. Maya Kova seems like an expert based on my conversation with her. And I very much enjoyed her perspective. And I always, again, I bring it up a lot. If you're doing this work in New York City, where like the stuff is, amplified, maximized, like, you're going to be spiritual. It's going to force you to really come in hard with those points of view because otherwise, this isn't a Sedona based person. Okay. This is like a New York City person that's trying to actually awaken people. You're going to be faced with challenges. I very much enjoyed Maya. You're going to enjoy her too. If you enjoy Open Loops, please share this podcast with your friends, family, anybody that maybe don't share this episode with your family. I'd be, though, if you do share this episode with your family and that's the kind of family you live on, like maybe I'll interview you in the future. But if you're into this kind of thing, like, yeah, please do share and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Leave a review if you like it. I'd love to hear your feedback. Now, without further ado, the inimitable Maya Kova. We have Maya Kova here on the Open Loops podcast on a very special nighttime episode. Yes, Maya, you are a transformational coach, but specializing in the tantric arts, a tantric alchemist. First of all, thank you so much for coming on the show.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, you know what? You've been studying this kind of like this self-development, life science, these kind of fields. I know on your website it says for consciouslytransform.com for the people for over 10 years. I mean, I got to get the origin story. I got to know how a person in New York City becomes a tantric specialist these days. I want to know. I'm just curious.
Thank you. Well, Tantra actually came almost the last on my, my tools, but it actually kind of put everything together.
Oh.
Yes. I was always into, personal growth and understanding what's like how to make, right, our existence here more pleasurable.
Right.
And more positive. Because I personally, as I discovered much later and recently, I have actually very intense emotional sensitivity. So, right, like when things are uncomfortable for the majority of people, right? Like for me, it gives me like even more, right? Like it activates my nervous system more. And that was something that I didn't know about myself. And I was thinking that I need to do a lot of healing, especially when like 5-10 years ago, it was very popular, right? Like healing and self-work and improvement and all that stuff. So that automatically drawn me into that. And when 5 years ago or 4 years ago, I was at my first tantric seminar, and tantra, it's all about, right, dropping into the body, feeling the body and shifting your attention from the mind to your sensations. And when I had a first like tantric experience, right, which was, some connection practices, some touch, I found this like a lot of joy and playfulness and a lot of like positive emotions that I actually didn't have access to because, right, all my mind attention was on, I need to fix something. And that was like a first big like aha and breakthrough of like, there's something interesting going on here. I want to learn and I want to understand more how I can access then more pleasure that is clearly somewhere here and available for me.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's a very interesting reframe on fixing the brokenness inside of you, if that's really a thing. Because I definitely think therapy is traditionally about, and I've had a lot of people on the show talk about, like, okay, well, there's a core wound. We got to go in and fix that and untwist it, where, and that can be in the body. It can be mind work. It could be past life or whatever that is. But to kind of like, it's almost like a hack in a way to be like, wait a minute, do we have to keep going there? Or could we just jump into pleasure and really just like really like get to another level? Like, I've never really thought about pleasure as like a more enjoyable way out of dealing with like the daily drudgery that having a human mind can bring. Do you find that's true?
Yes, you are so on point. You're so on point. And this is all, it's kind of like at the core of my practice. And because it's not that I want to say something bad about therapy, right? Like sometimes, I mean, we need to understand what events, right, caused maybe certain behaviors, or right, like connect the dots. I would say therapy is great to connect the dots, to bring you self-awareness. But therapy in its nature, it doesn't help you to move forward, right? Therapy, you can continue to going in circles every time. It's like, it seems like you're peeling the layer, but technically, right, it's the same toxic kind of, you know, situation that you just staying in, right? And I would say like, it's like in the, right in the sand, you're just going deeper and deeper and deeper, but it's not helping you to actually get out or move forward to. That's why a lot of people right now looking for different spiritual practices, right? Or in general, like different coaching that helps them to actually break the pattern. And the credo of my practice is live your power, not your pattern. And that's what I want. I want everybody to come back, right, to their truth, to their power, whatever it is. And when I work with my clients, I always tell them to use this mantra that, right, like, I'm not broken and I don't need fixing, but I'm simply coming back to my inner, authentic, sensual wholeness.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Wait a minute. So you're telling us that our wholeness is in pleasure? Like, it starts like, is it that baby in the womb, like the warmth, we were swimming in this placenta? I mean, that's, I know it's kind of gross sounding, but like it did kind of start with pleasure, didn't it? Until like we were pulled out of the, you know, like I don't know. I mean, do you look at the world that way, that like we're always going back to that initial warmth?
No, I unfortunately, we condition not to. Right? Like we condition not to, we conditioned to, and it's, you know, it happens for several reasons, because we have negative bias, right? The way our mind functioning, right? Mind pay attention to the danger. So mind is constantly on alarm, right? It's constantly scanning the environment for what happened, but mind only uses the data that it already has. That's why, right? That's why we always kind of like keeping in mind all the negative things that had happened to us, and it keeps us very limited. Body, in contrary, right? It's kind of, it's all about healing and thriving, right? And there's this vitality that is in our body. And it's as simple as, right, you have a cut on the skin and it's going to heal. So there is this desire in body, right, to constantly feel good, to be good. What happens is we conditioned to kind of like we're conditioned to experience ourselves, right? Our identity through the mind, through the constant chatter, right? And if we pay attention to it, if we're unconscious, it puts us in these labels. And I always tell my clients, forget about all the labels. And even if you have like ADD or something like that, forget about that, right? Like, don't put yourself in this box. Let's find who you really are, right? Let's go back to your truth. Let's go back to what's in your heart, right? What's in your soul. And when we talk about pleasure, it's not only about, like, I don't know, chasing goodness and chasing an orgasm. It's softening into self-acceptance. It's softening into self-love. and kindness, because when it comes to traumas, especially if somebody has, I mean, we all have like some childhood traumas. It's just the question is, how deep it is and how intense it is. It's something usually, and the reason why we have traumas from childhood, because when we're little, we don't have capacity in our body like process the intensity of the emotions, right? Process the unfairness or process the betrayal. And we just stuck it, right? We usually, we develop certain patterns that helps us to survive. But this initial hit, right? That initial pain, it's still there. It just wouldn't know how to access it. And then when we grow up, it's like something that's nagging, right? It's something that's in you all the time. And then you start projecting, right? Attracting certain circumstances, trying to unconsciously rewrite the story, and then go for therapy, right? Fixing yourself. And what I do with my clients, it's a lot of different practices and it's kind of like reprogramming, shifting from this inner critic that I'm broken, I need fixing, I need to improve myself, into absolute unconditional self-love and self-acceptance. And I teach my clients how to work with their emotions, how to work with tough, right, with scary, with unpleasant, with painful emotions through self-love and self-acceptance. Now, when we talk about right touch, and when we talk about tantric practices, and when we talk about using our sexual energy for our healing, that's kind of like more advanced alchemical level, because sexual energy is the most high vibrational energy that our body can generate. And once we removing the shame and the guilt that we have around sexuality, because, right, we kind of conditioned through religion and society to not feel freely in our right sensual sexual expression. And the reason why, because if you suppress sexual energy, in a way you can control a person, because sexual energy is life force energy, right? It's this passion, this desire that keeps you in touch with your senses, and your truth is in your senses, right? In the intuition, in the knowing, where you just know something, right? And then you use your mind to implement it. But we conditioned to think about everything, control everything, plan everything, right? Being super logical, and then disconnecting from our heart, disconnecting from our senses. So when we removing this conditioning around sexuality, and where we just, right, appreciating that, boy, my body can generate this beautiful, pleasurable sensations. And you do use sexual energy then to clear this suppressed pain and different, suppressed energies that you might hold in your, right, in your chakras. Because with sexual energy, we're sending it always up the spine. And I always tell this to my clients who, sometimes coming to just learn like tantric practices and have more pleasure, right? Like learn full body orgasms. I always tell them that be ready that before it gets good, it gets really bad. Because the stuff that, unconscious, or the stuff that you are not able to access, would start coming out. And it can be simply that you start feeling more emotions. And usually it happens with men. They suddenly start feeling more emotions. And then, right, it's a big question, oh my God, how to deal with it? And same also for women, because we also trained to numb our emotions. And some memories might start coming out, right, out of nowhere, something that you kind of forgot that was right somewhere hidden in your, unconscious. Or even crying, right? Because crying, it's the form of release, and orgasm, it's also the form of release. And it's very common, right, for women, actually, when you do conscious, right, like practice, to cry, and like really good cry. And it's a different cry. It's a different cry where you just feeling victimized and you feeling sorry for yourself. It's a very low energy. And it's different energy where you're like feeling like, it's like, I don't know, like a volcano in a way, right? It's just eruption that helps you to actually liberate and access the places that you are not able to access.
Wow. So wait, that was like a huge answer for I don't even remember the
I
question, but
know. I'm sorry. I was like,
but I'm sure you do that all the time, Maya. I'm sure that's just who you are. But you know what? But it was a pleasurable answer. I got pleasure out of it. No, we were talking about the origins, like going back and returning to key pleasure. And I mean, if you think about it, what happens when babies come out? They cry. But there isn't. Well, also like it also makes me think of women that have an orgasm. I know someone that was very much like there's a practice of actually having an orgasm when you're delivering a child as part of like the.
yes, because it relaxes your nervous system.
Mm. Would you advise that? If you
I'm
can
not
have
a
an.
doctor. I cannot advise it. Like I can tell you that I one time had like a very I mean I was going through something and I had a very uncomfortable spasm in my body like like I just felt like certain muscles were like literally super tense and in pain and it was like really 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 painful and I'm like, "Oh my god, I need to go to the emergency room." And I like I tried like to do the breathing, I tried to take a shower, and like nothing was helping, and I'm like, okay, before I go to emergency room and spend $1,000, let me do what I know, right? Let me do my
Yeah.
remedy. And and I did some like some soothing touch, and then I just did my self-pleasuring practice. And right, like after the orgasm, my spasm was gone. Now I'm not addressing everybody who has physical pain to do that.
Yeah.
Right, like because I knew that my pain, it's not that it's physically something happened to me, it just I was going through like massive grieving, and I knew that like I had a lot of like this very heavy energy. So to me my spasm was just representation of like this thing that's right, like body also keeps the stress that we're going through. So I used this high vibrational, right, like potent energy to kind of move that energy, and it worked. So
Wow.
it takes for you to just knowing yourself, and then right, like practicing and understanding how it works, and again, it just feeling. And what I always teach my clients when they ask me questions, I'm like, well, close your eyes, drop into your body, and see what feels right, because the answer is here. The answer is in the body, whether your nervous system, right, whether your nervous system relaxes, whether you just feel this pull or sensations, or like I don't know, tingling or something. Right, you need to start learning your sensations, you need to start understand the language of your body.
Yeah. 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 So people need to be orgasming with their hearts.
Actually,
Is that what is that what
there
you
is a
teach?
practice, there's a practice, something about that, yeah. I
I
heard.
mean, this is interesting. I also was like, is this story going to end with her delivering a child at the hospital?
Yeah.
Because that would be weird. Yeah, I'm like, what is going on here? But no, no, no. That's great. That's amazing that you have enough mastery of yourself that, and it's again pleasure. I mean, let's be real. What's happening right now in the world? If the world, I just jump right to it, Maya. I'm jumping right to it. If people were more in touch with themselves, if people were more in pleasure, how
Mhm.
much different would everybody's Facebook wall look? Do you think?
That is so true. Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think? What do you think about that? Like what is I mean, some people have said it's self-love. Some people have said it's empathy. I've had people on my podcast that are like, well, if we can find the love for the people, if we can find what we love about Donald Trump or the people that we don't like, then we can like heal the world. And then, you come in and you're like, pleasure. Could we like really, would this be a good way of healing the globe
Well,
if we were to discover this for ourselves?
you are so on point, and there's again, I have like several things that I wanted to say, so it's not
Oh,
going to
go.
be a short answer. But
Okay.
answer,
Okay.
answer. It's
No, go down the rabbit hole. Take me down the rabbit hole. I'm ready.
my philosophy, and what I'm practicing is 100% yes. But what's very important is being conscious about what you're doing and why you're doing it, right? No spiritual bypassing. Because when people are talking about, oh, I just want to be like high on positive vibes, right? Like, or just like, I'm not going to react to anything, I'm just going to be in a la la land. That's right. Like, that's a spiritual bypassing. No, we need to feel everything fully, right? And if you're angry, you allow yourself to feel angry. If you're disappointed, you allow yourself to feel disappointed, right? If you're struggling with something in life, you do your best. But I call it like conscious nurturing.
We'll
And
go
we
into
all
that.
need to do it, both men and women, but women especially, because for women, this is an access to our feminine power. And conscious nurturing is, there's several things that includes in this concept, but I would say at the core is savoring, right? If it's basically consciously opening yourself up and your senses to receive pleasure, whether it's your favorite coffee, whether it's right like the beautiful sunset, whether it's a conversation with somebody you love, whether it's a hug, right? Whether you're just watching your favorite movie, whether you're happy about the news, I don't know, or your pet, whatever it is, right? Like suddenly open yourself to like receive it fully as the child would get excited about something. And we need to do it consciously because we have this negative bias, the way our mind works. And if we're not bringing conscious nurturing and right, like the savoring, where we're not training ourselves, oh, let me enjoy this moment to the fullest. Let me open myself as wide as I can to receive this good, small pleasure. And we can find it every day and every minute. And if you start doing it, you really just, instead of being depleted, you start feeling, right, like this life force energy. Because why we're talking about sexual energy as life force energy? Because that's a concentration of the most, I would say, highest pleasure that's available to us. But even with a small pleasure in life, you kind of like contributing into life force energy. So then you have more vitality, then you have more creativity, then you have more resilience in order for you to deal with whatever is it that's happening. And another thing that I wanted to say, that I'm actually right now in the process of creating the course that I will be offering at the end of November. It's only for women, unfortunately, but it's all about pleasure. It's all about let's release 2020 through a pleasurable conscious practice.
Interesting. Yeah. Look, I know I'm not a woman from what I can tell, but I am kind of curious, like for all of us out there and for my listeners, like, is there any kind of hint you can give us about like what would be a practical first step of releasing 2020? At least point us in the right direction. I don't want to spoil your course, but something, just something, please.
I mean, the course will be all about different practices, including self-pleasuring, including like savoring any moment that's available. But what I want to say, and I mean, 2020, I think every human being was affected by 2020 in one way or another way. And even though, right, we need to be fully present and concentrated to deal with whatever challenges we have, it's very important at some point to just kind of like sit and hold yourself, right? Like give yourself a hug and just really admit like, yeah, it's been so freaking tough and I did the best I could. Right? Like shift from the inner critic into your best advocate or the most loving parent, right? Like suddenly shift into, I don't know, like supporting everything you've done, even though, I don't know, maybe it was not all perfect, but acknowledge, right? Acknowledge the effort, acknowledge the struggle, acknowledge the loss, acknowledge the pain, accept the things that you cannot change, right? And just connect, kind of like connect deeper with yourself because, right, when we look for love and for compassion, what we're really looking for is our own love and compassion. And I can give you, a very vulnerable example. My dad passed away in August. And at the beginning, I was like, very like holding myself together because I needed to do that at the beginning. And I knew that. But then I also knew that eventually I would need to drop into that, pain and the grief and loss. And then at some point, I started noticing that I want more attention from people. Like I want people to like console me more or feel
Mm.
sorry more for me. And then I said, and I'm like, that's kind of not okay. Right? 'Cause
Right.
every time we're grasping for something outside, that's usually a sign, oh, what do I need? How I can support myself. And then it suddenly hit at me and I wasn't shocked that, wow, I'm actually not acknowledging that I just lost my father. I'm actually not acknowledging my own stress and my own pain. I'm actually not being compassionate to myself because I'm not creating a space for me, right, to grieve. And that was a huge aha moment. And I'm sure that everybody lost something, I mean, this year in one way or another way.
Hmm.
And releasing, right, like releasing grieving starts with simply acknowledging, yeah, it freaking hurts like hell, right? And just sit with it.
Wow. Wow. You know, I'm very curious. You know what, and I'm going to get down to like the real stuff that I'm wondering about because you are primarily oh yeah, I know nothing so far has been real. This is where it gets Maya, get ready for this. Vibrators. Here's my here's my argument. I'm gonna go with this right now. Vibrators. What is your stance? Are they messing up sexuality for women?
Yes, 100%. 100%.
Wow.
100%.
In the same way that porn is messing up things for men, like
Oh
is it
my
kind of
God.
the
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. And I'm a very balanced person. So I never say black or white.
See, that's the interesting thing. I also wanted to ask about masculine and feminine because I've had in, you know, I mean, I'm in the theater arts community and I have a lot of female friends. And, you know, when you kind of like start talking about esoteric concepts and the concepts of masculine and feminine energy, there definitely is kind of like a oh, you can't really say that anymore. There's no such thing as, you know, like masculine and feminine. We're blurring the different lines. And no matter how you kind of spin it around, like, I don't quite think I'm talking like J.K. Rowling here, but I also think that masculine and feminine, like light and soft, darkness and light, like, I think they are, that just happens to be the name that they are. And there are two different forces. So, I mean, like, being someone in New York City, I guess my question is, and we'll get back to vibrators because I do think it relates. Like, do you feel like you do have an uphill battle sometimes with liberal minded people that aren't like, whoa, what do you mean feminine energy, masculine energy? Like, how do you deal with that?
Well, I call myself as feminine sensuality coach. So that answers your question.
Right. I guess people wouldn't seek you out if they were like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, that's, I understand that there's so many desires to change the world, but there is the hard truth, whether you like it or not, we live in duality-based world. Everything has its opposite.
mm-hmm.
And by denying that everything has its opposite, or that right now it's very popular in spiritual community to talk about unity consciousness, talk about
Right.
oneness, talk about like, oh, I'm one, right? Like, as you said, like, oh, I don't have masculine and feminine energy. I'm just this bubble of light, which is okay. Awesome, right? Like you can declare whatever you want. The reality is this is duality based world. Your body runs both energies, right? Like you have metaphysical energy that operates on the duality. Like you're not going to run away from it. What I teach and what Tantra is about at the core is helping us to embrace the duality and turn it into beautiful dance of the opposites. So you don't have to pick between masculine and feminine. You don't have to pick between white and black. You don't have to pick between pleasure and pain. You just need to understand how to do the dance, which means if I have to go completely into my pain, I'm going to go completely into my pain with the trust that I have capacity to go through it. And then more pleasure will open up for me, right? The same comes to understanding your inner masculine and feminine. We all have inner masculine and feminine. When it works in a beautiful dance, right? For women, it's your inner masculine kind of like holds your integrity in a way, right? That's a solid container of you knowing who you are, and you responsible for getting your needs met on every level. You, right? Not your boyfriend, not your mom, not your boss, you, right? Which means you know
Mm.
your boundaries. That's your healthy inner masculine. Then your feminine goes into self-expression and creativity and sensuality and nurturing and love and all of that, you know, beautiful stuff. For the man, right? It for men it's very natural to have this structure, to hold space, right? To be organized, to be goal oriented. What's when it comes to the inner feminine, right? It's to have connection to the heart. Allow yourself, right, to feel. Allow yourself to get vulnerable, right? Knowing how you can find safety within your relationship with, you know, whoever it is in your life, where you can allow yourself to actually connect to your heart, right? And being expressed in that way. So that's a beautiful example, right, of this dance. What is
Yeah.
happening, right? Society put so many labels, so many unconscious labels of what we should do, how we should act, and all of that stuff, which messes with, right, like with us. Because if you don't know, it's like, okay, who should I be? And I really love the video that Cynthia Nixon produced, right, when she was showing different women that are trying to fit thousands of boxes, and you have a big question mark, well, which one should I be? And you will
Mm.
not find the answer in society, you find the answer here, right? What is my truth? So when I work with women who have a very powerful masculine, right, and who have this idea of being like super independent, right, but being independent, I actually teach you this, being sovereign in your feminine instead of being independent in a masculine way, where you go into, oh, I don't need anyone. We all need someone, right? Like, or everyone. So
Right.
that's not true. So it's about, right, like balancing. And when I talk about feminine sovereignty, it's being in control of your needs, being responsible for your needs, and take care of yourself. For women, first responsibility is not take care of somebody else, is take care of yourself, where conscious nurturing is come in. That's super, super important, because that will liberate you. So I think it's all about knowledge, right? Learn how you can play the polarity game within yourself,
Hmm.
right? And learn how to play the polarity game in a relationship. And when in a relationship, it's kind of it's more beautiful and more interesting, because if you really want to have like this fire and passion in a relationship, you just consciously need to allow yourself, and you don't have to do it like 24/7, right? But you can consciously agree that, like, okay, for 1 hour per day, we're going to go completely into this roles. Where a man goes, let's say, right, or whoever channel like masculine pole, right, masculine energy in a relationship goes into this masculine expression of, right, like decisiveness, and also serving the feminine. And feminine, right, like the woman or whoever channels the feminine goes into like completely feminine expression, which is surrendering into receiving her desires, right, and being in this receiving role. But, right, that's very important to understand that, right, feminine surrenders into receiving her desires, and masculine, by its decisiveness, actually serves the feminine. So it's like there's no abuse here. There's a lot of
Mm.
conscious communication and agreements. But then in order for you to have this juicy experience, you need to go completely into different polarities. And women usually very afraid to go into surrender, because women don't know how to receive.
Right, right, right. Yeah, this makes me wonder why so many women that I've gone on dates with have been like, yeah, my last boyfriend was a I tend to fall in love with like narcissists and sociopaths. And I'm like,
Oh my
something
God.
must be off. Wait, yeah, you got a solution to that? What's going on with that? Talk to me about that, please.
Yeah. I'm so not supporting the talks about narcissists and victims. I'm so not. What I think is going on when we meet somebody who holds this mirror for us, these people who we call narcissists, they simply showing us something that we are not capable to access about ourselves.
Hmm.
And it's usually this desire of, oh, love me more than I love myself, accept me more than I accept myself. And I truly believe that it's like karmic or spiritual or soulmate even connections, even though it's painful. But right, we usually have this tendencies of anxious avoidant attachment, right, or victim and narcissist type of relationships. But what is happening is it's lack of personal responsibility, and both people are actually mirroring one another through the polarity that, hey, you need to take your responsibility for your well-being in a much better and more authentic and more honest way. And because we don't want to see this about ourselves, it's very painful to say, oh, I actually don't know what I want. Oh, I actually so afraid to let go of this relationship because it's my whole identity.
Oh.
Right? Like, there are so many things that we're afraid to say to ourselves. It's much easier to go to your girlfriends and, blame this person, right? It's what's happening in 3D, but what's happening in like 4 or 5D, right? It's like the person is literally holds a beautiful mirror for you to see that you need to wake up, right? And that you need to rediscover or reestablish relationship with yourself first and foremost.
Yeah. What would you say to I definitely I feel bad sometimes because I'm going like, always look on the bright side. Like you gotta go through the pain to find the joy, all that stuff. But I also do think like that men can be terrible and can be rapists and are like, and we can get into the millions of reasons for that, like suppressed sexual energy turned into Harvey Weinstein and unhealthy relationships and all, like yeah, there is, we could keep going back to that. But here's what I would say, like, what is a healthy, is there a healthy victimhood? Is it okay to like have had a really traumatic experience with someone and really like blame the dark forces for that and then go through it? Like, how would you distinguish between that and what you're talking about before? What is the difference? When is it okay to go through it? And if you do have to go through it, what's the way to I suppose transcend that place where you're at because of that trauma?
Wow, it's getting real.
This is Facebook, folks, and the podcast for those of you listening. Yes, yeah, we're going into it, but I'm fascinated by your answer.
Yeah. I mean, on a philosophical kind of realm, I don't have an answer, because the things that's happening sometimes to people and the unfairness, especially for me as a person with high sensitivity, like I can handle it. Like, I don't get it. It's very hard to answer, right? In those situations, why me? Why I go through this? Why I have to deal with it? And I think that it's such a wrong question to ask. I would say deal with pain, right? Find a professional help that can help you to cope, because depending on what had happened, I feel like really finding somebody who can help you just to go through the most roughest points. And, and then I know it will sound like a cliche, but everything happening for us. I don't know, right? And then it's the matter for you to open yourself, right? Again, it's all about opening. I actually think if you ask me what's the purpose of life, I would say there's no purpose of life except of make your existence here more pleasurable, and just open yourself up, right? Like open yourself fully up for whatever the hell it is. Because I feel like the more we're opening ourselves, then things can move much faster. And when it comes to pain and trauma, it's not that, right? Like how to put it, like we are holding on to it. But if we permit ourselves to move through it, and release it, it's going to be gone. As I said, right, when it comes, then that's why somatic practices, whether it's, tantric practices or other modalities, it's like the body wants to heal, the body wants to thrive. So no matter, right, what happened to your body, it has this vitality. And if you team up with your body instead of your mind, you will be able to move through it. And I, in particular, I do not work with sexual trauma because thankfully I don't have any experience, but I know coaches and I know tantra practitioners who does. And I know that people can fully heal their sexuality after, like very traumatic experiences. I know it is 100% possible. It takes dedication, it takes consciousness, but it's in the body, right? Like we're kind of wired for pleasure and joy and right, like fun. It's in us. And if we believe, right, if we believe in this theory that we all coming from this love and we just coming here to experience duality so we can kind of like self-experience ourselves, then right, like this goodness and this light and this pleasure, it's kind of within us. So I don't know if that answers your
No, I mean, look, I really, I think I love the honesty of it. I love the honesty of you not saying that you are, because I do think there are other people out there that like haven't gone through the trauma and said they could probably heal it or work with it. So like, I appreciate that, like, your limits as a practitioner, but also, you speak to what you've seen out in the field. I always kind of feel like it would be, I mean, in light of like the media and things like the Nixium cult and all this kind of stuff, like, how can you be a male tantric practitioner in 2020? Like, isn't everybody kind of a little skeptical?
Oh, I know quite a few, and it's not easy, but there's a very positive thing in all of this, that men are also called to be more in their integrity and be more conscious about their masculinity and about their sexual energy. And I would say that there is nothing more beautiful or sexier when you can meet a man who owns his shadow and stays in integrity. Seriously, it's just like irresistible cocktail.
Oh, wow.
And I think a lot of men are, right, like I doing, like there's a lot of men's group, there's a lot of masculine mastery, courses and classes where men can learn, because, it's not that I don't support the Me Too movement, but it's always like, and it's just me, I always see both sides, right? We're talking about the effect, but we're not talking about the cause, right? And the cause is the lack of education, right? The sexuality being suppressed, right? Like having this very one-sided patriarchy, right? Like dynamics that, again, rooted simply in fear. It has nothing to do that somebody has more power. Yeah. So there's like so many layers, and I feel, like I feel sorry for women, of course, but I feel sorry for men as well. Because right now we're just in a major kind of like confusion and collapse when it comes to genders and what is okay and what is not okay. And in reality, right, women, we do want to feel, right, like that the power and desire from a man, right? Like we do want, right, somebody to kind of like grab us. But when it coming conscious, right, and when it coming consensual, that's one thing. When it's crossing the boundaries, right, and when it's kind of like barbarian, that's completely, completely different. So I would say it's all about educating yourself and then learning and getting into the circles where people, right, like where people have knowledge about it. Because and I think like my dream would be that everybody would get this tantric understanding and overall understanding about sexual energy and the polarity and how we do this beautiful dance between, right, like masculine and feminine, between men and women. Because women, we do want to be taken, right? We do want kind of experience this ownership, but it's consensual and it's coming from the place where our desires, right, hurt, and when we are respected. So
Yeah.
it requires so much just self-awareness on both parties, because that's very important for women to also know what the hell do they want.
Mm,
Because if women do not know what they want, it creates the temptation for abuse. Because if you don't have your power, if you don't own your power, if you allow somebody else to own it, you're going to end up being abused. And sometimes it can be actually a form of self-abuse by simply staying in a ridiculous situations just because you don't have connection to yourself. So in order for us, right, to heal this collapse and disbalance, there is work on both sides. And I would not, I mean, if you'd ask me, I would no longer like look back into the past and like talk about the past all over again. I would actually shift the dialogue or the monologue or the discussion into how we're going to move forward. What can we do?
wow. Wow. I just want to know how I become an irresistible cocktail. That sounds pretty.
Oh, you still hooked up on that.
I'm like, I need to get in my shadow shelf and come out with integrity. Like New York, I'll take it by storm. My gosh. Maya, give me advice right now. Do you train men how to become irresistible cocktails?
I help men to definitely get more in touch with their heart, because the moment men get in touch with their heart, then they can access their shadow, right? Because for men, it's harder. It's harder to admit that, oh, I have, I don't know, certain challenge or certain pain or certain, certain shadow or certain archetype or certain behavior or certain thing, right, that I am doing out of fear or out of pain or out of something. And it's the same formula you accessing through, right, through the heart.
I was going to say, if men become irresistible cocktails, like, what's the irresistible, like, food or drink item that women become for men?
Well, I think women just by default, we are irresistible and we are seductresses. Women just don't know how to access it because everything just got so like it just like what you should or should not do. There's way too many boxes.
This is what's interesting. I'm like, you're based in, I mean, look, if you are actually based in New York City and doing work with women in New York primarily, I mean, I assume in this world you do Zoom, but part of me is like, Maya, you should have always been doing Zoom, because if you are in New York, what kind of life are you trying to combat? Because metropolitan America is like career climbing, get to the top. Like it is a very, hate to say it, patriarchal energy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my gosh, first of all, America needs this kind of work, not just these cities. But you're like, okay, I'm going to go to the toughest place in the world and I'm going to bend buildings. So they're a little more like, like that is insane. That is insane. I wonder why you do it. Like, what do you have a personal challenge to reform? Do you think it all starts in New York and then it bubbles out from there? Like, what is going on with you and cosmopolitan USA?
I think a lot of people are waking up, especially after the pandemic or during the pandemic, because we're still in it.
Do you think more people are coming to you now? Like, do you see a rise in women wanting to be more feminine?
Yeah. Actually, I shaped my courses. It became to me very clear, just my message and what is it that I teach. And I do several group classes. And the upcoming one is this Friday, November 13th, the 10-day feminine embodiment course, where women just learning like basic embodiment practices. And embodiment, it's all about, right, like feeling your body and connecting with different parts of yourself on a sensual level. I think more and more women, right, like because we try the feministic approach, right? We try to be this like, I don't need anybody, and it didn't work, right? And then we tried this, and I don't want to say like I don't want people to misunderstand this, but we tried like this Me Too kind of like content, right? And then like being in that, and no one really want to stay, right, like in pain for so long.
What happened when that was going on? Were you like, because some people did see it immediately and they started going like, this thing has to happen, and I personally believe it had to happen. But were you always seeing the five dimensionality of it? Were you like, okay, this has to happen, but there will be another end? Or were you like really, were you in the movement yourself?
No, I was not at all. And I'm so fortunate. I'm so fortunate to the universe. I honestly, I never had an experience that can fall under me too. But I never had an experience that can
Wow.
fall under me too because till my 21, I I was so shut down, like energetically, that even though I
Hmm.
was a pretty girl, the guys had like no, like they couldn't just approach me because I was just like, I had such a shield around me, and that's a story for a different conversation. Why? So it kind of saved me on another hand from, from any kind of stuff. And then I don't know, I just overall was, I guess, very fortunate in my interactions with man. So I felt the pain and the
Mm.
story, of course, that's traumatizing. But as I said, like I always see, and I just have this that just in me. I cannot help it. I always see the full picture. I always see both sides. I never say that one thing is responsible for everything that's happening. So, and
Yeah.
then that's the thing. And it might sound harsh, so I apologize, but it's so easy to stay in victimhood.
Hmm.
And you asked me about the healthy victimhood. I would say the healthy victimhood, it's probably initially, right, at the beginning when you are like experiencing it, right, at the beginning where you just in it, like at the beginning stages where you simply going through self-love, self-acceptance, right, like in releasing it and just like feeling, right, like they're so unfair, and you basically acknowledging it, right, there's the acknowledgement process. But then you need to, right, get out of it and like, okay, how I can move forward. Because if we just stay in the victimhood mode, and right, like the big question mark. So
Yeah.
I as I said, I truly believe that Me Too was a great invitation for both men and women, for women become more responsible, for right, and more clear on, right, on kind of like, this, it's not me who said this, but feminine always rises first. And it's right now happening a lot of like conscious kind of awakening for women. They actually releasing, and what women releasing, we're releasing our smallness because we were conditioned for right, like I don't know, for 2000 years or more than 2000 years to play small, to get our value through serving, right, through giving something or delivering something. And we did not have actually our sovereignty as women. Like we don't see our value, right, if I don't have a husband, or if I don't have, I don't know, right now it's job, right, if I don't have something, then I'm not. And feminine power is internal, right, it's actually honoring and acknowledging your gifts, your creativity, your sensuality, your beauty, right? The inspiration that you bring to this world, and honoring that, and then taking full responsibility of how I live my life, what choices am I making, from which place. So I feel like Me Too is just ending this victimhood mentality that unfortunately we all, you know, been living, and it's not by choice, right, that was the reality. And I also think the reason why many women like going through a lot of emotional stuff, I truly believe that it's releasing it for our ancestors, because right, our grandparents, grandmothers, they were not able to have the emotional collapse. They needed to
Yeah.
freaking survive through the World War I or two. So we're releasing all that pain, like for, for these generations. So
So we're now in a place. So you're talking about that feminism didn't, well, or at least the what was happening before, where it's like, I don't need anybody else. That didn't work.
yeah.
Me Too didn't work. And you now see more people coming into this place. Uh, that's cool. How does that fit into like the social constructions of New York City, i.e., bars, nightclubs? Like, does Maya Kova go out to one of these high simulated events and like yeah, you don't, you're shaking your head. Yeah, I mean, I feel like these places are traps for
Yeah.
like enhancing the darkest shadows of like false masculinity and femininity, like just like dangerously false. Like I like how do you live in this world with these social constructions and bring forth these energies in a natural way without them, whoever they are, trying to manipulate and suppress it?
I think actually what you are doing, right? To have people who having podcasts, who, who are active on their social medias, who talking about it more and more and more and more. It's all about education. And I feel like everybody's hungry for knowledge. Like really, people are hungry for knowledge because I think, and I'm not an expert, but I think everybody starts sensing more. It seems like the vulnerability level for humanity is rising, and you know that your old habits, right, your old patterns, it's not working anymore, right? You feel the void, right? The emptiness, that black hole in a way, right? That no matter what you put inside, oh my God, it's not working. So everybody right now is seeking for knowledge. And I think the more people like you, or and people who are more vocal, we're just contributing in humanity. We're contributing in the process.
You heard Maya. This podcast is an irresistible cocktail for your ears. Is that true? Is it? I'm not saying I'm irresistible cocktail. Don't worry. I know I need to work harder. No, but yes, that's awesome. I mean, I definitely love having these conversations and learning more about this kind of stuff. I'm like, my gosh, New York City, what a challenge. I love that though, that you're taking it on. I had another question about masculine and feminine energy for you. But now I forget it. What about vibrators for a second?
Yes.
Let's go back to that. So
let's go back to that.
Yeah. What is happening there exactly? Because I feel like it is another mismanaged, like societally created thing.
Yeah. And you saw one point when you said vibrators for women and porn for men. That is so true. What we are doing with vibrators and porn, we are in a way, right? Like we taking our capacity for sensations away, right? Like let's say if you have, right, we're talking about 100% capacity, when you start using vibrators or porn, you utilizing only 10% of the pleasure that's available for you. So there is 90% of the pleasure that you neglecting and numbing.
Wow.
Because vibrators, right? Because you use, I don't know, whatever, like I use it for maybe like once or twice. Just to kind of
like the magic wand
what
that
is
like hit what that magic wand that's oh my god. Yeah, I mean they're crazy things, these items. They're like insane.
Right? Like you using the pressure and you using this,
it's an industrial tool, basically.
Exactly. You're using, right, like the tool, and especially if it's, I don't know, plastic or whatever is it, right? Like it's and the thing is applying pressure, and usually women, they want more pleasure, pressure, and because, right, like you need so much pressure, it's like you taking away the sensations, right? Because our clitoris is very, very sensitive. We have 8,000 nerves endings, and if you start using the vibrator, it's like you numbing, I don't know, like 80% of it, and you're using only 20% that's available for you. And usually for women, when they stop using vibrators, it's like, I cannot feel anything. But you have to go through the process, right? Whether it's self-pleasuring or, right, the practice with a partner, where you just allow yourself to feel just a little bit, but then it's gonna come, right? Like it's kind of like you're like desensitizing, right, your senses in a way. And for men, it's all about visual stimulation, right? When we're talking about porn, visual stimulation. And I don't know even if they use any kind of moisturizer. And I highly recommend for everybody who is on the call, please use coconut oil. It's great for the body. It's great for the skin. It smells good. And it's a very nice structure. So please, please, please use at least the coconut oil. It makes your experience more pleasurable. But it's all about visual stimulation. And that's why usually men who watch porn, they sometimes have even issues, right, to get hard, even if they feel a desire for a woman. unless
Right.
women start performing something. And that's because of that. And then again, in order for you to like release that, that addiction, you need to go through an uncomfortable process of like, I can't, or like I'm not feeling anything, right? Like, and just surrender into it. And then slowly and gradually, right, through the breath work, we're teaching tantric breath work, which helping for both men and women to start feeling, right, more and more and more sensations in their sexual organs. And it's a process, right? It's like any, when you, right, like releasing any type of addiction, you need to go through that moment of like, right.
So are you doing are you doing like the Reiki kind of stuff where you like put the hand over the guy's body and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh," like I've seen on videos?
Kinda, I can do something like that. Yeah.
How magical are you, Maya?
I'm very magical. When it comes to my touch and to my feminine energy, I'm very magical.
Whoa, what does that even mean? Okay.
It
Okay.
means that, when you're talking about the Tantra, right, or Tantra session for men, right, because you always in the energy of giving, 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 giving. And when you come for Tantrika, right, you shifting into the role receiving. And for men,
Mm.
right, it's uncomfortable at the beginning, but then it feels so good. And it's beautiful. I love working with men. And what I love about the experience is just being able to connect with a person and then just pour unconditional love, right? I don't know
Yeah.
anything about the person. I don't need to know their title, their money, their wealth, their whatever it is. Right? I just see a human being who is looking for, for some touch, for some connection, for some love where he can surrender into his heart. And there is nothing more beautiful when you see a man who allows himself to actually receive, the love.
Yeah. Here's my question. Did the 60s get it wrong? Like in the 1960s, there was like this sexual like revolution. And I felt like everybody was, I mean, at least from the pop culture I watched, it was like everybody was having sex, Animal House College, people were just like going nuts, hippies, free love, orgies. And then like, of course, what happened? We get to the 80s, we get to AIDS, and then all that stuff like kind of STD, it all kind of stopped. Like, I'm wondering, it feels like you're moving to a world with a little more pleasure, a little more love, a little more like free love, man. But at the same time, like, I wonder how we do that in a world that, well, obviously right now we're socially distanced, so we can't. But like in a world that might be in the process of ascension and awakening. Like, do you have a vision of what the contemporary version of like the 60s might be for us?
I don't know how conscious it was in the 60s. It's very hard for me to say.
Yeah.
Because, it's so funny. So funny what I'm going to say right now. When I was in college, my thesis paper was about the leisure time in ancient Rome. And actually, sexual orgies was a big part of the leisure in ancient Rome.
I was going to ask you about that next, actually. Very interesting. Keep going.
And I mean, there was a fancy thesis paper like on a philosophical cultural aspect. So it was not so much about the orgies. But what I discovered in doing the work is that if the leisure is unconscious and if the leisure is all about feeding the animalistic, very low energy, low vibrational, kind of like primal desires, it's gonna get you to the right degradation and eventually collapse, which is exactly what happened to Roman Empire. And right now we are doing it in a different way, and we're bringing consciousness to it, which is communication, container, right, mutual respect, where two people are able to take care of themselves, right, where we releasing a lot of victimhood and a lot of labeling of abuser and narcissists, and right, like we everybody's taking responsibility for their shadow, right? And like on a simple way, okay, we might say that the typical shadow for woman would be going to victimhood, and the typical shadow for men would be go to the narcissist. Okay, let's admit it, right? And then let's do the conscious work around it, so we not fall into those characters. Let's bring the submissive, right, the seductive submissive energy from the victimhood on a conscious level. Let's bring, right, like the strong macho decisive energy from the narcissist on the conscious level, and let's see what we can create, right? Because when we taking the unconscious abuse of whatever extreme out of it, right, it creates completely different relatedness. And I'm in this community, and if you ask me, I'm not advocating for polyamory. I'm not advocating for like have sex with whoever you want. I'm advocating for feel what is true for yourself, right? If everybody's around you having sex, doesn't mean that you have to do it too. Like it's so releasing the social conditioning that I need to fit in, and actually able to feel and follow your own truth.
That's great. Would you want to be in a Roman orgy?
No.
Really?
No, and I actually, between me and you, I mean, and everybody watching and listening to us, I never had a desire to go to sex party because I never was attracted to animalistic and conscious aspect of sex. And only when, and I feel a lot of sexual desire, and I absolutely love and enjoy sex, but I never had a desire to go to sex party because I was actually afraid of who's going to hold the container, and like how it's going to be like, right, like what will be like. And on top of everything, at that time, right, 10 years ago, I also didn't know what acceptable for me or not, because I knew, right, that if somebody would press, I might do something that I was not really yes to. Right now, I don't have any issues to say no if there's something that I don't want to do, and I don't care, right, about like who is doing what or what expected from me, because I know very well, I know how to read my true answers, right? Like the instincts in my body, what is yes and what is no. And no, it's me taking care of myself. And I think a lot of people, when we don't know our inner boundaries, it's very dangerous to go into all of these sexual games, because this is also the most vulnerable place. You really can get traumatized. And then it's very hard to say, should you blame, let's say, somebody who crossed certain lines, or should you blame yourself for not knowing where your lines are? And ouch, it's a painful conversation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you keep circling around this, and I've never fully understood it. Sexual energy and what the power of it is. Like, for people that really, really don't delve into this stuff and just like might think it's some like woo esoteric thing, like how much credit can you give sexual energy for, I don't know, everything?
I think it is everything, because as I said, it's your life force, right? Like okay, if you ask me what sexual energy is, pleasure, the way you open for pleasure.
Are you a hedonist?
I don't know, what does that mean?
Oh, that's like the philosophical term for like a Caligula type, like someone in Rome that just lived for pleasure. Like philosophically, all they want is pleasure.
But look, aren't our whole world right now is in pain? Like, aren't we live in pain? We've been living in pain for how many years, for how many centuries, for how many decades? I mean, not even decades, like thousands of years. Like, aren't we like suffocated with trauma and pain, and more pain and more pain? Like,
Did you ever go to that store Lush?
No.
Oh my gosh, this I think is the most devastating part of the pandemic. In addition to, everything else, most devastating part of the pandemic in terms of stores shutting down. Let me correct myself, listeners. This store, what you went in and all they had was like different topical things, like different soaps, different moisturizers, and the whole point of the store was that you would go up to different stations and the people there would actually like take your hand and like squeeze this substance in your hand, and you would rub it in and you would smell it. It was the most pseudo erotic hedonistic experience. Like, I loved it. I feel like you would, I mean, it's the name is lush. It is like the pleasure of enjoying it. Like, I feel
Wow.
like you're all about that.
It's actually, I take it as a huge compliment. I
That you would go to Lush.
I
Yes.
think, sure, why not? I would.
Do you like moisturizers? Do you like moisturizers?
I do.
Like, what is a pleasure like, we're talking about tantric energy, but like, how does pleasure manifest in the non-sexual ways in your life? Like, are you, do you like rubbing warm blankets up against your cheeks? Like, what are some of the things that really bring you
I
joy?
absolutely love the comfort of my bed and everything that's around sleeping. I absolutely enjoy every moment of it. It's like right now I'm treating myself with a trip to Florida, and I'm absolutely enjoying the sunset, the sunrises, the beautiful weather, the beautiful nature. But I would say the way pleasure manifests in my life is like alignment, like meeting incredible people everywhere. Always, I don't know, like things are falling into places, right? Like I'm just thinking about that. Oh, I would love to do something, and boom, it's happening, it's coming to me, like
Mm,
opportunities. For me, the pleasure is connection. I love people, and I have, like, I would say that my biggest accomplishment of 10 years living in New York is my network of people from like different areas of my life, right? Like from completely like in different um I don't know, help me with a smart word. Like,
different spheres of
yeah,
influence, different,
yeah.
yeah,
And
fields.
that brings me so much pleasure to connecting with people. And right now, the more I surrendering into this, right, like living from dropping the control and trusting life, and like I'm learning how to do it as well. The more I see how magical it is, like the more I see how supported, loved, and guided I am at every step that I take in my life, and this brings me pleasure. And as I said, it's just retraining where you put your attention, because energy is attention. If your attention is on bad things, this is where your energy at. If your attention is on good things, this is where your energy at. But this is, like we hear about this formula, but it's really start working when you allow yourself, right? When you open yourself and just allow yourself to experience it.
Wow. When people meet you, do you just hug them immediately?
No, especially right now, no.
I don't know. I'm like, you're stretching your.
You know what? I'm actually very picky about who I allow into like close proximity to myself. So,
Wow. Is it because you're so magical?
yes.
My gosh. I want to know more about this magic. I'm very interested. Do you have any like weird do you have like a psychic connection? Like do you like can you move things with your mind? Like what's going
Yeah.
on there?
I cannot move things with my mind, but I can.
But you and this feminine energy. Tell me, you know what, for the listeners, before we wrap up, I'm sort of curious. Like, what is an example of a way you've used feminine energy that some might look at and be like, wow, that was magic?
Such a yummy question. Um, Let go of control. Letting go of control and dropping into, again, into just feeling content, generating this pleasurable, good, positive energy in my body, savoring a good experiences, and trusting a lot myself that I will be able to deal with any challenges. Letting go of control and letting go of actually have a very steady course, right? Like
You're
where
thinking of something very specific right now, aren't you?
several things, honestly, but I would say this is the most closer to my heart, because
Yeah. Yeah.
I was very much into, like, there are things that I was very much afraid of. And because of that, I wanted to control so many things, and I crashed so many times. So I learned the lesson in the most hard way, and by being open, right? What is femininity? It's sensuality. What is sensuality? It's being open to all the sensations. I would say I no longer afraid any type of pain. I'm not choosing suffering anymore, right? If I have to feel pain, I'm going to feel it and then I'm going to release it. I'm not going to carry it with myself. And then I'm just opening myself more for positive experiences. And right, what attracts man to women, it's to see this radiance, right?
You know what? You inspired one more follow-up question, which is for women out there who are like, I don't get it. Men always think I'm flirting with them and I'm just being nice. What do you say to them? What is going on there?
Uh, well, you're not going to like my answer.
They're just being nice. No, that's fine. Look, I know I'm not a cocktail
No,
yet. I'm like a ginger
no,
ale.
I think what might be happening is if you have a conditioning, and many of us have a conditioning to play people pleaser,
Mm.
right? People pleasing has a certain energy around it. And it depends who you're gonna attract with this energy.
Wait, why am I not gonna like your answer specifically?
Oh, I don't know, because my answer is again about taking your responsibility. Like, I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just pointing kind of like in the harsh truth that women, right, when we talk about being nice, isn't it, the side of people pleasing? Isn't it the hidden desire to be liked and to be loved because there's parts of yourself that are not accessible for you? Right? Isn't it
Yeah.
that you actually secretly want the attention, but then you don't know how to receive the attention? You know?
Hey, who says I don't like your answer? I love your controversial answers.
Awesome.
That's why you're on the show. My gosh. No, this is amazing. You know what? I love everything you're doing, Maya. And I know you do have some classes coming up and some programs. You want to talk about those coming up in the next month or so?
Yes, I actually going to have two amazing group courses for women. One is November 13th. It's 10-day feminine embodiment course where you learn basic practices, how to connect more deeply with your sensuality. And the other course will be November 30th. It will be 21-day in a way pleasure challenge.
Oh, nice.
Yes, it would be an invitation for women to release the pain and the grief of 2020 through different tantric practices.
That's like the masculine and the feminine right there. Like pleasure, challenge, pleasure,
Yes,
challenge.
yes, yes.
Like, wow, way to bring the polarities together,
Right? Yeah.
Kova. Yeah, pretty
And
good.
in December, I will be doing a great class on Sunday for both men and women on masculine and feminine energy, where we're going to talk about archetypes. We're going to talk about wounded and empowered, masculine and feminine, and kind of dive deeper into understanding how to bring them to a beautiful, harmonious dance.
Wow.
And I work one-on-one with both men and women. So if you want some private one-on-one coaching, I'm also available.
Consciously transform.
Yeah.
Yes, consciouslytransform.com. We'll definitely, the link is there for those of you who are listening, seeing this. Maya Kova, my gosh, you blew my mind several times.
Yay.
You taught me I must align more with the shadow. You taught me that, what did you teach me? To not be a victim, Greg. Quit your people pleasing. Greg. Yeah, this is all about me, really. Let's be real. I'm like the embodiment of the feminine and the masculine, just all in one, but mostly feminine. And no, you taught me so many things. I mean, my gosh, I think you're definitely an interesting voice in this awakening movement. If there was anything you would want to leave everybody with as we are in this election season, as we're going into 2021, as we're all trying to find more ways of pleasure, what would be the words of guidance you'd have for the people?
When you wake up in the morning, before you get up, ask yourself a question. If I truly loved myself, how I would like to feel today.
Wow.
And use this answer as a reference throughout the day, right? Don't allow the circumstances take away your joy or whatever is it, or peacefulness or calmness or contentment, whatever is it that you want. Because that's the only thing that we're in charge of. It's the way we feel. And about the election, don't don't get sucked into polarity.
What about the vibrators? What should we do with those?
Stop using them.
Should we toss them out? Donate
Yes.
them? My
Yes.
gosh.
Yes. I mean, you can use them, to relax your neck muscles or something like that.
Wow. So you don't need to get rid of your vibrators. Just turn them into something else.
Yes.
Talk about a tantric alchemist, folks. That was the magic right there. Maya Kova, thank you so much for coming on again. You were fantastic.
Thank you.
Maya Kova, consciouslytransform.com. She was awesome. Definitely want to have her on again. Especially she's saying this controversial stuff. My gosh. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it was too controversial. Though I'm definitely willing to have anybody on that wants to defend victimhood, or at least, I guess, conscious victimhood. I'll entertain it. I'll definitely explore that. I think what's nice about Maya is that she offers a perspective that she knows is limited by her own experiences. So I appreciate the honesty there. I really do. I also appreciate that I can throw out this vibrator. Just kidding. I don't have a vibrator. Thanks so much for listening to Open Loops. Lots of love, lots of heart, and lots of pleasure for you this week. Have a ton of pleasure. Have a ton of non-sexual pleasure. See if that can be a thing. Can't wait for Lush to open again. One day. With love out there. All the love in the world. Thanks for listening.